Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
It's time for another edition of Talk Back. I am one of your hosts, Eric Nesbit, and with me, as always, is Justin Gay, your host and director of content. We are fresh off of Game 5 of the NBA Finals, and what a Game 5 it was. We know the result now, and we know that they're going back to Golden State. So no secrets, no spoilers. In fact, this episode of Talk Back is going to be all about our opinions, and there's a lot to talk about. Justin has the show notes all loaded up. I've got my rants all loaded up, and I'm sure he has reactions as well. So we know that it's 3-2. The Raptors are still ahead. They're going back to Golden State, but we have to talk about Kevin Durant. We've got to talk about free agency, and we've got to talk about Game 6 of this series and what we expect to see. We're going to have all of that and more on this episode of Talk Back. We'll see you after the break.
All right, we are back, and Eric, you said it in the teaser. We got to talk about Game 5, one of the crazier NBA Finals games that we've seen in a while. There is so much to unpack from this game in this series that looked like Toronto had it really
under control.
Favor. Up 3-1 with a home game, and then the news breaks that Kevin Durant may be coming back. Goes to a workout on Sunday. Eric, we're texting back and forth. Is this really going to happen? Is Kevin Durant coming back? So, Eric, just what was your emotions watching this game, watching the way Durant started this game, and then ultimately what happened with about 3 minutes into the second quarter?
Yeah, I'll kind of go slow here. That way we don't kind of give it all away right up front. So let me just kind of react to what your first question was. Because, yes, we got through the weekend, and it was like, well, maybe Kevin Durant's going to be part of the shoot-around on Sunday. He's now questionable for Game 5. And you kind of get to thinking, was Golden State going to use him as a decoy here? Did they put him on the active, ready-to-play list, but really no full intentions of having him be on the floor for more than 8, 10, 12 minutes in the entire game, right? Because you and I talked about in episode 248 last week of, we're looking at Chris Broussard, we're looking at Woj, we're looking at guys who really know the game of basketball and are around this series night in and night out, and they see what's going on. They see the practices, they talk to the players, they talk to the coaches and staff, and it did not seem like Kevin Durant was ready to go, and yet somehow he goes from doubtful on Friday to not playing, then questionable on Sunday for Game 5, then before Game 5, Kevin Durant's playing, and Justin, for me, the biggest thing was no restrictions. How do we go from questionable to no restrictions? So, Justin, that's where I'm at, and that's where my head's at as we watch him in the first quarter look really, really good. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really odd that he looks strong. He looks, his shooting obviously was on point. I think he started off the game 3 for 3 from 3-point land, had 11 points, was looking fantastic. So I'll let you get into where we go next. But Justin, that's where my head was at as we entered the game. We have a guy who was doubtful for Game 4, then didn't play, then questionable the night before Game 5, then ready to play with no restrictions heading into the game. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is fast forward here.
Yeah, the timeline makes absolutely no sense. We recorded the show last week before Game 4 to get out ahead of it, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about, what is going on with Kevin Durant? Is this injury more serious, and there's really no chance that he's going to play? He doesn't play in Game 4. They get whooped. Things don't look good. They're down 3-1. Jalen Rose comes out and talks about that he watched or viewed or somehow had some inside knowledge on this workout that Kevin Durant went through before game 4, and he termed it as a disaster, that it looked awful. And then so you're like, well,
as you'd expect, right? I mean, a month off of basketball
had played for, at that point, 30 days since he'd been on the court in live action. It probably wasn't going to look great. So you're starting to think like, okay, see the note that he's going to travel to Toronto. He's been with the team the whole time. And then all of a sudden when it comes out that, well, he's going to shoot around and see how it goes. And then it's on ESPN before the game, he's going to play in short bursts. And then Doris Burke comes on and goes, no, there's no minute restrictions on Kevin Durant. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
How did we go from a disastrous workout to the guy that we think is the best player in the game, or that, when I say we, I mean, that's one of the media speculations out there, that surely a top 3 guy in the league. How does he go from a disastrous workout, not even talking about 3-on-3, 5-on-5 full contact? It just sounded like a normal walkthrough workout, just seeing if he could, I guess, cut, come around screens, things like that. And it didn't go well, to less than 96 hours later, you're playing him with no restrictions. I thought that was what just, it made zero sense to me as a fan, Eric. And
that's what led me, Justin, honestly, to start believing that there was some controversy going on within the organization. And I'm not even getting to the controversy yet. I know we'll want to talk about whether or not it's true, or whether or not there's these rumors swirling around about whether the players were dissatisfied with Kevin Durant. I really have no knowledge or opinion on that. But what to me starts my speculation is, you see this fast forward over the last 3 days. You see how this injury was handled from an organizational standpoint. And now I think it leads us to believe, were we as the public, or we, and you and I aren't part of it, but we as the media, were we being told the truth through this whole thing? Or is this a bigger issue here, which I think has implications for the NBA? We've certainly dealt with this in the NFL, where if things hit the injury report, do they need to be 100% factual? Justin, I'm still on the side of the fence now, and I need to rant on this a little bit here in a few minutes, but I'm still on the fence now that we were never getting the full and complete story out of this Kevin Durant injury from May 8th in the Rockets series, and I still don't believe that this was a calf injury. That's how we fast forwarded these last 3 days, because I don't think this was ever what it really was as they told it to us.
It seemed like it was a lot more serious than just a calf strain, that even if there was a significant tear, or it did involve the Achilles, or they were trying to hide, maybe there was a slight tear or strain in the Achilles and they just used it as the calf. I don't know what was going on. Bob Myers' reaction after the game leads me to believe that there was more going on here than we're being, either the organization was pressuring him, his teammates were pressuring him, he was pushing to get back. Something doesn't add up here. There's parts of this story that we just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that you can blame KD at this point to say that he was wrong to want to play, but we haven't even heard from him. But everybody always terms him as soft, and he's had this label, and he's done it to himself with the stupid burner accounts. But Eric, I don't know if he's his worst enemy or not, because when you look at this, I fully believe that he's a guy that just loves the game of basketball, and that's his life. That seems to be all that he does. You've watched some documentaries that are on him. That's his whole summer. His vacation revolves around just getting a place and going to play basketball and having different guys come in. That was a few years ago. So do you feel like he came back because just he wanted to be on the court with his teammates? Or was some of this that desire inside of him that has those burner accounts that wants to respond to Tim in Oklahoma City or Bob in Hoboken on Twitter from a burner account that wants to put criticism on him? Which side of it really fueled him?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I mean, I think you're hitting a lot of good points there, because you can come at this from a couple of different angles that are only slightly different from one another. In other words, Kevin Durant as an athlete, as someone who loves the game of basketball, I'm sure it was killing him not to finish that Rockets series. I'm sure it was killing him not to play in the Portland series. And now we go into a series as an NBA Finals where his team is down 3-1 and he hasn't been a part of it yet. So just him as a man, as a human being, as a basketball player, that's got to be killing him that he's not part of the game, right? So I totally trust that that's probably true. So that's one aspect of it. And that's why I think these things are kind of in lockstep with each other and maybe not mutually exclusive things. However, we do know exactly what you pointed out, that Kevin Durant is soft. He hears a lot of what's going on Twitter, even if it's from some random guy in Texas, some random guy in California, whatever. He hears all that. He reads that, and he sometimes responds to that. So he's looking at it. He's hearing this. Well, after the Portland series, and I myself am guilty of saying that, not that they're a better team without him, but that they could survive and still win a championship without him. That he was a luxury to this team. That yes, he is one of the top 2, probably 3 best players in the league, if not the best player when he's on. And so having him on the team does make the team better. It would be stupid to say it doesn't. But I was still on the fences to saying that a healthy Clay, a healthy Steph, and a healthy Draymond with the other pieces could still do it without him. And I think he hears that. I think it bothers him. So there's this part of him now that says, okay, my team's down 3-1. I can maybe rush this back. And if I can just get some solid minutes, put 20 points on the board, 8 rebounds type of thing, and we come back and win this finals, that changes everything for my legacy. And then I think there is this other part of it where I think he's probably just a really good teammate. It seems to be that a guy like Steph, who a lot of people would trust, and a guy like Iguodala, who a lot of people would trust, you see those two guys walk him back to the locker room. I mean, those were minutes off the floor. The game was still going on. So Steph and Iggy walking him back to the locker room is essentially minutes that those guys aren't on the floor for the Warriors. That tells you right there that I think the team was behind Kevin Durant, and they do respect what he tried to do, and that this was devastating to them. So I think the third part of this, which is, yes, he wants to play for kind of silencing the critics. Yes, he wants to play because he just loves the game of basketball, but also, yes, he wants to play because he wants to be part of this Warriors story. And, you saw the Portland series. We talked about it, the team photo with the Western Conference Championship trophy, that he wasn't in the picture. I think it was probably killing him that he wasn't part of that. And so he rushed it back. We'll get into, I have more to say about that rushing it back thing, but from the team standpoint. But right now, I can't heap any blame on Kevin Durant, no matter which of those 3 angles that I just pointed out that we take, because I think they're in lockstep in some ways and not totally just separate, mutually exclusive things.
So who do you ultimately think made this decision based on what you know, based on what you heard from even Bob Myers after the game? Do you feel like they were trying to hold KD back? Do you buy into the rumor that the team was frustrated with him, that other guys were playing through injury? Who ultimately do you feel, and does it even make sense to even blame anybody at this point? Or I guess I'm not really trying to blame anyone. I'm just trying to figure out, I'd like to know more about this process of how they went from not even being able to have a workout on the court that they could deem a clean workout, or that they all came out with positive remarks, and it being termed just a complete disaster, to having him on the court, to now what appears to be a ruptured Achilles, which we're going to get to later, and how that's going to change everything. But what do you think that process was like with the way that Bob Myers reacted, Eric? It just makes me feel like there's a piece of this puzzle that we don't have.
I totally agree. I think after the finals, and maybe a month down the road, or maybe even at the beginning of free agency, there's going to be some dust blown off of this story. I think there's something here that we need to pay attention to, whether that's Kevin Durant trying to push the team because he says, hey, I want to be on the floor. I want to play through this. And the team actually saying, we'd really rather you didn't. We'd really rather you didn't. They're getting multiple MRIs. And then maybe the team comes to a final decision that, okay, we'll let the player make the call. And then once this injury happens, it's just devastating because maybe Bob feels some guilt over letting the player make this decision because it wasn't in his best interest. Now, the flip side of that coin, some of the conspiracy theorists, and I got to be honest, I might be on this side, is what if they themselves were saying, you know what, Kevin, you're probably good. Yeah. You're ready to go. Nothing worse could really happen. Kevin's not a doctor. He's a player. Right. And as we just pointed out, he wants to be on the floor. We've seen this in the NFL, Justin. You know this very well, that the players aren't always told exactly what's going on in their bodies. And to me, that's a real shame. But what if there is some sort of guilt, some sort of responsibility that Bob feels because his team physicians made an edgy call because they're down 3-1 and they allowed this to happen when really they shouldn't have?
I think that's probably as close to it. I think this was more KD pushing to get out there, wanting to get out there with his team. I also think you hit a word, legacy. Down 3-1, and you are the best player